Hello, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a focused learner looking for a little clarity in the daily news cycle, well, you are in exactly the right place. I'm literally thrilled to have you here. Today, we're taking a highly structured journey through the current global cycle. We'll be looking at massive geopolitical shifts, rapid technological advancements, and some pretty extreme physical events that are, believe it or not, all interconnected. Our goal today is to break down these complex stories, find the true signal in all that noise, and make sure you walk away with a crystal clear understanding of the exact forces shaping our world right now.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, global tensions and trade. Number 2, the AI Cold War. Number 3, mRNA cancer breakthrough. And number 4, climate and natural disasters.
Section 1, Global Tensions and Trade. Tariffs, blockades, and the global economy. $20 billion. That is a massive number, and it actually represents the value of Canadian imports that were just spared from a sweeping 50% tariff by President Trump. Now, what's absolutely crucial to understand here is the timing of it all. This agreement was reached less than 2 hours before those new tariffs were officially scheduled to kick in. Talk about down to the wire. This delay is providing some really vital breathing room for negotiations, temporarily reducing what was turning into an immense economic strain between two historic neighboring allies.
Now let's pivot over to the Middle East and see how this builds into an even more complicated geopolitical picture. The United Arab Emirates has actually just suspended all financial and economic transactions with Iran. It's a pretty drastic measure, and it follows reports from Emirati authorities that 2 ballistic missiles launched from Iran targeted maritime traffic, though thankfully they ultimately landed in the sea. Iran, for its part, has entirely denied responsibility and called the accusation baseless. But if we take an impartial look at the geography here, this shift is incredibly significant, mostly because Dubai has traditionally functioned as a vital economic link for Iran. So severing that tie, that is a major escalation in regional isolation. And this brilliantly illustrates the complete standoff happening right now at one of the world's most critical maritime choke points, the Strait of Hormuz. On one side, you have Iran officially declaring the waterway remains completely closed until Washington fulfills the terms of a June interim agreement. But on the other side, Washington absolutely insists the strait is open. Meanwhile, the Pentagon notes the U.S. can sustain a blockade of Iranian ports simply by rotating their naval forces through the region. It's a tense, incredibly high-stakes game of maritime chess.
Just 6. That is the real-world consequence of this standoff. Only 6 commodity vessels actually passed through the Strait of Hormuz on Tuesday. To put that into perspective for a second, the daily average just recently was 11 ships, and before this conflict even began, this exact same strait carried a staggering 18 million barrels of oil every single day. So the flow of global resources through this region has essentially been reduced to a trickle.
So, what does this all mean? Why does this matter to you and me? Well, because these macro geopolitical tensions inevitably hit the global economy. Brent crude oil has now settled at $91.62 a barrel. August crude flows absolutely plummeted to just 2 million barrels a day. Major Chinese state-owned ship owners, among others, are just completely avoiding the strait because of the uncertainty regarding attacks and blockades. For global trade, this means elevated insurance premiums, significantly longer shipping routes, and constrained fuel supplies that are currently propping up some unusually high processing margins. Ultimately, you end up paying for this disruption at the gas pump and right at the checkout counter.
Section 2, the AI Cold War, regulating the future of artificial intelligence.
Right now, Washington is preparing to ask partner countries to strictly choose between 2 very distinct artificial intelligence frameworks. In the American ecosystem, you've got a proposed Washington AI coalition featuring giants like Apple, who, by the way, are actually having to build separate internal models just to meet Chinese regulations. Meanwhile, companies like Meta and NVIDIA are heavily investing in open-weight systems, which basically means freely available AI architectures. Opposing them, Chinese alternatives are gaining some serious ground. You have WorldClaw, which is interestingly backed by Trump-supported cryptocurrency tokens from World Liberty Financial, DeepSeek, which is aggressively driving down global inference prices, making it incredibly cheap to run AI models, and Unitree Robotics, whose recent public debut exceeded available shares by 8,000 times. No joke. The global tech ecosystem is actively fracturing right in front of us. Now, to really grasp the sheer scale of this AI arms race, consider this staggering statistic.
Big technology companies have now accumulated approximately $1.09 trillion in future data center lease commitments. Let that sink in. We're talking about over $1 trillion entirely dedicated to just housing the physical servers needed to train and run the artificial intelligence models of tomorrow. So, the crucial point here is that these digital brains don't just run on thin air. They require massive physical infrastructure, and they are placing an immense physical strain on global power grids. Cloud providers are fiercely competing for highly limited supplies of electricity and land. There's a massive bottleneck right now for high-capacity grid connections. And over on the labor front, we're seeing a surging demand for electrical engineers, cooling specialists, and grid planners. Plus, because financing and operating costs are absolutely skyrocketing, smaller AI infrastructure companies are basically being pushed towards consolidation. This huge digital boom is creating a very real physical squeeze. I want to just pause the narrative right here for a second and ask you to lean in and really think critically about this. With over $1 trillion committed to data centers and this massive, unprecedented strain on physical grids, is excessive AI optimism creating a market bubble? It's a vital question, and it's one that every major financial institution in the world is currently weighing. And to answer that question, we can look directly at the European Central Bank. They've officially warned that this excessive AI optimism could indeed produce a major correction in American technology stocks. We are already seeing a definite shift in the corporate mindset. Executives are no longer just buying into the AI hype. They are now strictly requiring AI programs to actually demonstrate measurable revenue growth, significant cost reductions, or provable service improvements before they invest another dime. Basically, the honeymoon phase of AI is over. Now it is time for returns. Section 3. mRNA Cancer Treatment Breakthrough, a historic high for medical innovation. Okay, shifting gears to some truly incredible news. Moderna and Merck have officially reported positive late-stage clinical trial results for an experimental mRNA therapy. The mechanics of this breakthrough are just fascinating. The treatment effectively reduces the risk of melanoma, which is a deadly skin cancer, from returning or spreading after initial treatment. And what scientists are doing now is actively evaluating whether this personalized post-pandemic mRNA technology can be successfully extended to other forms of cancer. Honestly, this could fundamentally change oncology as we know it. Now, what's really interesting is how the financial markets reacted. They were absolutely explosive following this announcement. Moderna's shares surged by an unbelievable 137%, as investors completely reassessed the value of their entire mRNA pipeline. Merck shares gained a solid 12%, and the breakthrough was so massive it lifted the whole sector, with the Nasdaq Biotechnology Index rising by 5%. But the real takeaway here is how this clinical success is directly translating into everyday impacts and careers. We're seeing an immediate, surging demand for scientists and technicians who have specific experience in personalized medicine and mRNA technology. This single breakthrough practically dragged the S&P 500 healthcare sector to an absolute record high. And interestingly enough, as this highly complex medicine evolves, these same medical organizations are simultaneously expanding their use of AI in documentation and scheduling just to handle the administrative load. It's wild to see science and technology accelerating hand in hand like this. Section 4. Climate and Natural Disasters. The physical world pushes back. Bringing the narrative back down to earth for a moment, Hurricane Lala recently swept through Hawaii, leaving some immediate and severe destruction in its wake. The storm completely cut electricity for more than 180,000 utility customers. It damaged around 100 homes and brought critical transportation and communication systems to an absolute standstill. Fortunately, seasonal trade winds have now returned to the islands as moisture comes back, but that initial physical toll was massive. And right now, researchers are actively studying how the steep volcanic terrain actually accelerated the severe storm runoff. So how does a community actually bounce back? The on-the-ground recovery process happens in a very strict, logical progression. First up, utilities urgently deploy line crews and tree removal teams across the islands to clear out the wreckage. Next, health officials have to issue strict warnings to ensure safety from remaining floodwaters, which unfortunately can contain sewage and disease-causing organisms. Then, as the power slowly recovers, hospitals can finally return to normal, life-saving operations. And finally, authorities meticulously check the island's museums and historic sites for any lasting storm damage. What's absolutely critical to note here is how these extreme weather events directly tie back to the workforce data we track. Disaster recovery doesn't just happen by magic, right? It requires highly skilled labor. Right now, there's an enormous spike in demand for electricians, power line crews, roofers, building inspectors, and heavy equipment operators.
Even in our highly digital age, when a physical disaster strikes, it is the essential physical trades, often supported by logistics personnel and satellite analysts, that literally rebuild our communities from the ground up.
And, this heavy reliance on advanced technology during physical crises extends globally. Following a really deadly magnitude 7.7 earthquake in Indonesia, thousands of survivors have been left completely without assistance, cut off by severe landslides and ruined roads. To combat this, emergency teams are heavily relying on modern satellite imagery and geolocation technology just to find these remote disaster zones. It is a stark reminder that modern space and tech infrastructure is absolutely critical for basic human survival in our most desperate moments.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. We've looked at massive blockades in the Middle East, trillion-dollar strains on our power grids from AI, miraculous leaps in mRNA medicine, and the sheer destructive force of natural disasters from Hawaii to Indonesia. So I want to leave you with this question to sort of tie all these themes together. As all of these forces rise simultaneously, just how resilient are our global supply chains and our local grids? I want to say a huge thank you to you, the Focus Learner, for joining me on this structured journey today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I really hope this leaves you eager to explore these global connections even further. Until next time.